Good evening, folks. Christmas Day, Triple Crown here, coming to you from Vancouver, British Columbia. Well, it's been a long and fun day, and topping it off with some Global War 1939. This is a continuation of the solo playtest round 12 summary. Here, we are focused on the Eastern Front between Romania and Bessarabia. We have a massive standoff. Everybody right now currently, the Japanese are doing well. The Americans are desperate to spend in the Pacific. However, the Germans have put pressure on the Western Allies as they do a slow retreat out of Russia. However, this could get interesting. I'm going to have to make a decision. Currently, the Russians, in terms of ground units, have 52 that can hit the Russians, in combined with about 6, 8, 9, 10, 11 aircraft. So that's 63 total. And defending, the Russians have 62. So that is crazy. Do the Germans go all in when they've been so focused on the West, the Western Europe, and go hard and push back into Russia? Because currently, Russia is also, where do we spend our money? Where do we spend our money? They did not do a build in Moscow last turn. They decided to branch out and surround and try and take back Stalingrad. They also, their build last turn went into defending Novosibirsk. They currently have numerical advantage of about 3 units. They have about 23 or 24, and the Japanese can only hit them next turn with about 19 or 20. So they have the advantage. The Russians decided that they did not want to lose Novosibirsk. The Japanese, we're going to get into what the Japanese did. They are focused hardcore on Navy. The Italians are helping out the Allies, and the Russians, they liberated the 2 Turkish territories, and they dropped off some French dudes as well. So currently, next turn, if the Germans go hardcore into Russia, the Turks, and combined with the French and the Italians, are going to start pushing up through Greece and take back Bulgaria. So that is going to be that. And again, this is a game in give and take. There's a little ping pong action here in Yugoslavia. They decided to leave Bavaria last turn, so they did not go into Bavaria. The Germans, their initial plan was actually to go into Reims and take back Paris. However, what did the Western Allies do? Well, they decided to reinforce Paris. The French had their first build in a long time. They built a fortification and defending Paris. Currently, the Allies have 87 units. And if the Germans bring in everything, including their build, all their fast movers from Western Germany and all of their aircraft, they can hit with only 80 units. So they are at a disadvantage. The Germans could have done a different attack last round, which would have been more of an even fight. However, they decided to send 6 infantry into Holland, Belgium to take that back from the Americans, another 2 units into Norway, and another 2 units into Denmark. So that was a decision they felt they needed to do. The Italians built 3 armor in Rome, and the British are now starting to push back into Turin. So Turin's safe next turn. They've got their 9 armor and 2 infantry there. The Allies have another about 12 units in Bordeaux, and the Americans caved. The Western Allies were screaming, the Germans are coming, the Germans are coming. So they did their typical build of 7 armor and 7 infantry and sent back their transports. The British are building infantry back in London. They don't have a lot of money to spend, so they built 3 infantry in Cairo. And actually, there's this transport. This is the transport that actually escaped from New Zealand and came around and picked up these 2 guys in South Africa and brought them up. So that's another bonus for the surviving Australian New Zealand transport. And the British bring their 2 tanks around. Actually, these transports are actually here, I believe. So they brought their 2 tanks and dropped off and 3 infantry and killed a lone Japanese infantry. And the other tank came across, blitzed across from Cairo. They also built a military base here in Iraq, and they've got about 7 infantry. So currently the Germans only have 1 infantry left and an artillery and follow-up. So currently the British can either go east and try and take back Cairo, which now the Japanese can see them coming and they're starting to do a large buildup, or they can help out the Russians and try and liberate these 2 territories here, which would be about a 4 IPP swing, which then might allow the Russians to do either a rebuild here or in Moscow. The Russians did push into Valpyri last turn. So that's a massive. The Germans also built another jet fighter. They have a medium bomber, a heavy bomber, a regular fighter, 6 tacticals, and 2 jet fighters. So that is a massive Air Force ready to do damage. So over here, the Japanese are spending a little bit of money here in Calcutta. A small build here in Siam. They did not build in Shanghai last turn because they decided to build the largest navy ever assembled, at least in my version of Global War 1939. They currently have, I did the math here, I'm gonna have to pull it up for you, 42 naval units that can attack, and another 8 carriers, and 10 loaded transports. I mean, that is just, the Japanese are coming. The Americans decided to build a naval base in Panama to bring over the Italian Navy. They did not spend Navy this turn. However, the Americans were impressed with the Germans last turn, you know, all their fancy stuff, so they decided to build a B-29 and some fast movers. And we'll get into that in a second, but they also built a Pershing and an M18 Hellcat and a couple other half-tracks, because if the Japanese come and do a landing over here in the Pacific Northwest or in Canada, they want to have, with their Air Force and fast movers, be able to hit whatever's there and be able to wipe it out and take it back. So that was the strategy the Americans had. They did not lend lease to the Russians. The Canadians are doing a slow build. They drove an armor across, and they now have, and they did an infantry build. They also have another 3 armor in Eastern Canada ready to come across and help if need be. So it's getting interesting, folks. The Japanese are continuing to, they grab the guys from New Zealand and bringing them up. They sent a small carrier task force over here to Siam to deal with this Italian armada that's coming around the Horn of, what's this territory here, Madras. So that's the Japanese answer to that. You have another 6 transports that can go up to Tokyo next turn. So they could, the Japanese could have, did I say 10 loaded transports? They currently have 6. So they could have, 12 loaded transports next turn, ready to go do damage in you know, Western USA or Western Canada. So that is dangerous. And the Japanese, they did not do much. They still have their build from the following turn that's racing across China to go take out these Russians. So there's going to be Russia, if they're going to, they've spent all this money there. So next turn they have the Russians, I think 38 to spend. So they're going to have to spend it there. So that's why the Germans are debating now to push back into Russia. And this is such a game of seesaw where, in conclusion here, sometimes my friend Gargantua, as the allied player, he likes to do what they call dogpile on one side. So if he is the Allies, he decides to spend all of his money and resources in one side. However, as you can see, the Japanese are expanding and they're turning into a beast. I think they made 133 IPP last turn, and America only made 104 last turn. So that's a massive swing. So currently the Americans, they cannot ignore the Pacific. They cannot go 100% into the Atlantic and help out the Western allies and try and take Germany. However, Germany is starting to shrink. So this is a game of seesaw. How much resources now do the Allies sink into trying and crush Germany so that they can focus then 100% on or at least more resources going towards fighting in the Pacific. So that's going to be interesting, folks. There is the Italian Armada. There's a naval base there, so they can make it back up to Western USA next turn, or at least off the coast of San Francisco. Or I think they can actually hit the Japanese fleet, but they wouldn't be attacking with the U.S. fleet. The Italians, in terms of reference, they now go when the British go. So, but that's it, folks. In terms of seesaw, you spend a little bit more money here as the Russians. That makes the Japanese spend a little bit. If the Japanese don't spend here, that means maybe the Americans can spend here. And this is, I guess, in terms of the seesaw, it's also read and react. Where is Germany attacking? Where are their fast movers going? That also determines where the Allies are spending their money. So you really have to read and react almost on the fly and count units. So, for example, because the Allies know they with this fortification there, they have the advantage. Their whole combat movements, their purchases are a little bit different. If Germany next turn decides to go full crazy and go into Russia, the Americans are probably going to lend lease the Russians some money next turn. So, and if they don't, if they decide to back up and they decide to, go hardcore after these guys here, they will probably do a more Atlantic build next turn. So that's what I'm talking about, folks. It's a game of seesaw back and forth. And the Germans still have a healthy economy. They're still making about 75 IPP. The British are about 45. The Italians are at about 33. So the Germans still, without the American support, have the advantage in the Europe. So the game is far from over. It's getting interesting. I'm debating constantly what to do. Go left, go right, go up, go down, go in the middle. And you guys let me know what you think. So thanks for watching, folks, and stay tuned for round 13.